Thank you, gentlemen. You may be seated. Thank you.
Like being in church.
So we're here for the 2020 FIM MotoGP season review press conference, a chance for us to analyse each manufacturer over the year. With us today, in current Constructor World Championship order, we welcome Davide Brivio, Team Manager of Suzuki X-Star, Paolo Gibatti, Ducati Corsa Sporting Director, Lynn Jarvis, Director of Yamaha Motor Racing and Monster Energy Yamaha MotoGP Team Principal, Mike Leitner from the Red Bull KTM team, of course, Race Manager of the MotoGP programme, Alberto Puig, Repsol Honda Team Manager, and Massimo Rivola, CEO of Aprilia Racing. There'll just be a couple of questions from myself, and then we'll pass over to members of the media so they can ask you a few questions. And Davide, we will start with you, if possible. After a truly excellent campaign in 2020, congratulations on, first of all, securing the Riders' title with Juan and the Teams' Championship as well. There is just one last push for you to try and fight for the Constructors' World Championship, but could this season really have turned out any better for you in terms of your expectations this season?
Yeah, it's been of course a great year for us. We started not so good in the first two races in Jerez, struggling. The first race with 0 points with both riders, and then we started slowly to get down, and then the turning point has been Austria when Johan got into the podium. Alex crashed, but also was, close to the lead of the race, and then we built up some consistency, and here we are. Johan achieved the World Championship last weekend, and still we are on the run for the second position with Alex Rins. So this is it's very positive. We're very happy. Also, we are fighting with Ducati for the constructor, and so arriving at the last race with also some other targets to be achieved. It's good, and I think also what makes us happy and proud is like we were able to have several times 4 double podium, four times both riders on the podium. It's a great signal how the rider are become strong, let's say, and how the bike is performing well. So we're happy, yeah, for sure.
Davide, since Suzuki returned to MotoGP in 2015, 4th in the Constructors was the best the manufacturer had managed, and 4th in the Riders' Championship. What has been this year the biggest factor in the transformation?
The biggest factor, you mean? Yeah, probably this year I think was very important, the consistency, because there were maybe many different riders winning the race, and also other constructors. For instance, Yamaha has won more races than anybody else, but probably we were able to keep consistency. So often on the 11 times on the podium, both riders, and so that is what paid. It has been a strange season. Also, it's been a little bit different game in my opinion, because many times we had 3 races in a row, which we were not so much used to that, and this is okay. But especially from technical point of view, the double race on the same circuit, which changes a little bit the game compared to what we used to. Maybe when you go the first time, then you have to quickly adapt the bike. On a second race, normally everybody comes much closer, so the competition is even harder. So that was something that makes this season also different compared to the normal. But okay, we're happy that we achieved the title.
Davide, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to come to Ducati next, of course, fighting at the moment locked on points with Suzuki in the Constructors' World Championship. Paolo Gibatti, with the Constructors' title still to play for, coming here into the Algarve International Circuit, and it seems as though the 2020 Desmosedici is an improvement on last year's bike. How would you analyse the 2020 season? Because from a Riders' Championship point of view, there hasn't been the push, I'm sure, and the speed that you would have liked.
Yeah, you're right. I think I agree with the analysis that Davide just made. I think it has been an unusual season. We all remember where we were in March when we were supposed to race in Qatar, and then the COVID didn't allow us to race there, and then at a certain point there was basically a doubt whether there will be a championship at all in 2020. So I think, first of all, it's a great achievement to be here, having been able to do 14 rounds out of a very difficult situation. And I think we must be happy, proud to have achieved this. In our case, obviously, you might think that because of the accident that Mark had in the first race, and then, unfortunately, the fact that he could not return during the season, we could have been one of the candidates to try to win this championship, because in the previous 3 years we had been always second behind Mark with Andrea Dovizioso. But because of several reasons, I think the format of a championship, the consecutive races, difficult adaptation of our bike to the new rear Michelin tire, and also the fact that the riding style that was familiar with our bike, with the previous package, was not really working so well for some of the riders, made it difficult for us. So basically we were, I would say, competitive and fighting for the podium almost in all races, but always with different riders. I think with the exception of Aragon, we were always fighting for the podium with some of the riders, and we put 5 riders on the podium. All the five contracted riders to Ducati were on the podium, including Zarco on the 19 bike. So, and this is also why we are now tied to Suzuki in the lead for the championship, and though they won more races, so they are leading the championship at the same points, with the same points. So somehow disappointing not to be able to be fighting for the riders' titles. I think consistency played a great role in Suzuki and Joan Mir. They did a great job, so hats off. We could not keep a consistency with all the riders, as I said. Different riders in different races fighting for the podium, but never with the same guys.
Paolo, can you draw comparisons to perhaps 2016 to this season? Of course, we didn't have the COVID crisis then, but Michelin had just come in. We had 9 different winners that season, and perhaps it took time for everyone to adapt to the new Michelin. Do you think that there's perhaps room for optimism in that scenario for next year, in terms of Ducati finding speed with the new Michelin?
Well, I think, as I said, I think if you look at the results this year, there were riders capable of doing great things on one race and then quite behind in the following race. So I think everyone has found some difficult time to adapt depending on the track conditions, and in the case of Ducati, we struggle when there is a low grip. So in those circuits, obviously, we have a difficult time. But obviously, we learn a lot this season. We learn a lot, and I think we have some ideas for next year. Obviously, next year is also with turn page, because we have new riders joining the factory team, both riders coming from Pramac Racing team. Obviously, it's also some emotional moment this weekend, because we will say goodbye to Andrea and to Danilo. Andrea's been with us for 8 years, Danilo for 6 years, if we count also the 4 years he was with Pramac Racing team. So, but anyway, we must look ahead, and I think we have some ideas to develop for the future, and hopefully next year we can be so consistent on most of the rounds, because this is the only way to be fighting for the championship.
Paolo, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Indeed. We'll move over now to Yamaha and to Lynn Jarvis. Lynn, so much has happened in 2020, especially with Yamaha. And after an amazing start to 2020 in Jerez, there have been some difficulties. And yet we sit here today, and Yamaha have won 7 races of the 13 in 2020. So how would you best analyse and judge this 2020 year?
It's difficult to make a single judgment on it, because I think it's been a very heavy year for everybody. I think for all of us here, for all manufacturers, for all the riders, all of the staff, because anyway, to run this season with the COVID situation has been pretty tough, I would say, in general. And as Paolo said earlier, I think it's a credit that we have finally, by the end of this weekend, we'll have done 14 races under very, very difficult circumstances. So I would say for everybody and for our team, it's been heavy. We've had our ups and downs throughout the year. Obviously, we started on a big high at the beginning of the year. Beginning of the year not, because Qatar was cancelled, but then in Jerez, of course, we got 1 and 2 in the first races. But whilst we won the races, immediately in Jerez, we discovered our Achilles heel. And our Achilles heel this year was the valve problem that we suffered from round 1. Already in FP1, Maverick had the first problem. Then in the race, Valentino stopped in the race. Frankie Morbidelli stopped in the race too. So this problem, this Achilles heel, has been following us all year long. And that obviously disturbed the chance for some of our riders to make better performances sometimes, because we had to modify the engines, detune the engines, and then we parked a lot of engines. You know, we parked 8 engines for virtually the whole year. So we've been running in a very strange and stressed and difficult situation for our riders, above all. And finally, that's taken a toll at the end of the year when we finally had this resolution in Valencia and we got the penalty, which affected the Constructors' Championship, the Teams' Championship, but fortunately not the riders. But it's been a hard year to managing COVID and to manage with that problem. It's been like having a rucksack with many kilos on your back. That said, on the positive side, I would say we saw many race victories as well. So our bike clearly was a strong bike this year, capable to win in many different circumstances. It's been a bit unusual as well because the Petronas team won 6 races and the factory team only won 1 race so far. There's this weekend still ahead of us. But obviously the bike had the potential and is competitive and was able to win races, but we have not achieved our goal, which is obviously to win the World Championship. And chapeau to Suzuki, because they've been very consistent. They put together a good campaign. Joan Mir has showed his maturity, and they won the championship. And so I would say it's been missed opportunities from our side.
Lynn, when you mentioned the Achilles heel that you had this year, combined with the stresses of COVID as well, do you think that they are the main reasons why there have been inconsistencies this year in Yamaha, or is there more to it than that? Because, of course, some of the riders have been saying one week we feel like we're winning and the next week we feel like we're nowhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a bit of a problem we've been dealing with for the last 3 years, actually. And we've seen it in some other years. It's been more extreme than this year. You know, we're always struggling with grip, with traction, and therefore also with braking. So, you know, on some circumstances then, you know, we've got 2 different specs of bike out there. We have 3 riders on the same spec, which is, let's call it the 220 factory bike. And then we have Franco Morbidelli, who is on the 220A spec bike, which has a different base. And as you've seen in the second half of the year, Frankie's put together 3 victories. So he's the man on form at this moment when some of the other riders have been struggling. So the bike has not been able to deliver by design consistent performances under all racetracks. That's not directly related to the valve problem. That's another matter of fundamental design.
Lynn, thank you very much indeed. We're going to move over to KTM now and speak to Mike Leitner. Mike, a fantastic year for KTM in general. 7 podiums this season, including, of course, 2 famous wins for Brad Binder and Miguel Oliveira, who step up to your factory team next year. Would it be fair to assume that, as a whole, KTM have been delighted with how this season has gone?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are very happy about that season. We are the 4th season in this sport now with KTM in the MotoGP, and yeah, we made a huge step from the 3rd to the 4th season. We felt that already in the winter test that something changed on our bike, and we worked very hard. The company pushed really hard, and all the engineers and riders been pushing. But then the season was stopped by COVID, so we couldn't show anything. And yeah, we've been back, one of the first company back on track for testing. And yeah, finally the races started, and the first race in Jerez already, Paul was performing very well, and we see Brad is also fast. And as long as the season was going on, yeah, we see clear the performance of the bike made a big step, and also especially in the race distance. and we had also some good qualifyings. And in total, of course, the 2 victories, the first one from Brett in Brünn and then Miguel in Austria was been a big highlight for us, of course. And yeah, we are very happy about this season and still working hard to make a better package for the riders and looking forward to the future.
Talking about the future, Mike, as we mentioned, Miguel will join Brad next year. Tech 3 have done a fantastic job also running the KTMs this year, but you must be sad to be saying goodbye to Pol because he's been part of this project now for the last 4 years. To lose him to effectively one of your rivals, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, you are right. I mean, Pol was a very strong part of the project from the start. And sure, it is, for us, was something we had to change our strategy for future. And we are not anymore sad. We wish him all the best in his future for his next project. But of course, we're getting 2 very fast riders in the factory team with Miguel and Brad. And also with Iker, we have a very strong young rider in Tech 3 and an experienced rider with Danilo will arrive. So, yeah, we will try to get out the best of these 4 riders and push the maximum.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
We'll go to the back row now and we'll speak firstly to Alberto Puig. Alberto, I think it's probably fair to say that any team losing an 8-time world champion for a whole season are going to find the year very tough. Perhaps at the start of the season it looked that way for HRC, but there's been some signs lately that the tide has turned, some positive results. How would you sum up 2020 from a Honda perspective?
Well, to be honest, when you are used to win nearly everything for the last years, winning nothing like we are going to do this year, it's not a good result, obviously. It's clear. So, I mean, it's clear also that we had this problem with Mark at the beginning of the season. Things didn't went in the correct way, and then it was really difficult. So, okay, we understood at some point that we will not have him to have a chance to be competitive this year or even to have some races. So, on the other hand, we had the rookies, which was Alex, and we had to call our test rider to cover his place. So, I mean, the beginning of the year for Alex was really difficult, but suddenly at the middle of the season, he made a big step. And at the same time, our test rider, from being a test rider, going 3 seconds per lap from top riders, suddenly was, let's say, acceptably fast. So we concentrated on that. Of course, it's not what we are used to, but things were like this, and when things are like this, you just have to keep going. I mean, nothing is forever, and somehow we tried to make what we could with the bike and see, to understand better the future, and that's what we have been doing.
Alberto, we obviously don't know exactly when Mark will return. We hope it is for next year. But regardless of his return date, how optimistic are you based on what you've learnt about this year's bike going into next year with Pol coming, the experience of another year for Alex? Taka's had a strong season as well because the engines are frozen. So technically, you know where you're at with the bike.
Well, I mean, this is a never-ending story with the Honda bike and the rider. It's clear that we have a super rider, and this sometimes puts the bike in a position where people don't believe. But if you check what Alex did this year with this bike, I mean, we are not so unhappy. We have some, of course, like all manufacturers, some things that are clearly not good. But we are trying to work. It's clear that the engines for next year will be frozen, and this everybody understood. So we will, somehow we are happy because we think we have some direction for the future. Of course, Alex next year will be more experienced, and Mark will be back, and yeah, we think we will be ready to fight. Also, Pol, coming from all these years' experience with KTM, I'm sure that he will help us, and he will be strong also since day one.
Thanks very much, Alberto. Last but certainly not least, Massimo Rivola from Aprilia. Massimo, so much hope coming into the 2020 season after a positive winter testing program, but so many hurdles to overcome. in this year for you, particularly when your rivals continue to move the goalposts. So your analysis of 2020, if possible, please.
Well, for sure, the 2020 started with a good expectation. Clearly, the bike was and is a step compared to the 19 and what was in the past. Obviously, it's quite a new bike for us, and we need mileage. This year was not the perfect year in terms because of the COVID and everything that we know. We improved on ourselves to the competitors more than half seconds, so it was quite a good step. Obviously, when you are, let's say, far away, the first part is easier to gain, and now the difficulty comes even more. Racing this year is it's quite funny. You are not. If you see the last race, we finished P9, 15 seconds from P1. Last year we finished P9, 33 seconds from P1, and that's the average, more or less, of all over the season. So racing now is much more funny. Clearly, the show is better. We are close to the main group, and then it's not depressing. Actually, it's a boost because we feel we are close and we need to do the last step.
Massimo, Aleix continues to show signs, as you just mentioned, that the bike has that potential, it has that quality. We all know, obviously, what happened this year with Andrea Iannone. How close are we to finding out who will partner Aleix next year, and how important is it to you to have that stability going into 2021? Because, of course, that was perhaps one of the biggest hurdles that you had to face this year also.
Well, stability for sure is important. Bradley did a good job during the season. He was supposed to be the test rider, but at the end, when he was racing, he went closer and closer to Aleix. And also, we are giving some opportunity now to Lorenzo Savadori to let him be a better test rider for next year. Who will be the teammate of Aleix next year? We still don't know. I know it's late, but everything came late, and so this is the consequence. But hopefully, very soon we will know.
Massimo, thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you all. That's it from me. Time to pass over to members of the media for questions. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's Guido Venman from the Netherlands. My first question is to Lynn Jarvis. Over the last couple of years, you've been very early with signing your riders for the next years. And especially this year, you were really early with signing Fabio and Maverick for 2 more years. This now means that Franco Morbidelli will not be in the factory team, at least for the end of 22. Does this mean that you will review your strategy on the signing of riders in the future? And my second question is for Davide Brivio. Over the last few years, we've talked about having a satellite team, but now you've proven that it's not necessary to have a satellite team to win in MotoGP. Does this mean that you will remain with your current strategy, or we can still expect a satellite team in the future? Thank you very much.
Yeah, in answer to your first question about the timing of deciding riders for the future. Anyway, firstly, I would say we're very happy with our choice. So, you know, we believe in our riders that we've chosen for 2021-22. So they have a 2-year contract. You know, it's competitive on the track and it's competitive off the track in this world. And if you look around here, you see that there's 6 manufacturers. And all of the 6 manufacturers all understand that the pilot is very, very important if you want to achieve your goal and your objective to try to be world champion. So we are also competitive off the track, and everybody wants to, shall we say, not be gazumped and not be beaten and not see their rider of choice be taken by a competitor. And last year we made an early move with both Fabio and Maverick. And at the same time, that happened, of course, when Valentino was uncertain to decide his own future. So it was a very particular circumstance. And I can only say I don't think that it will change our Frankie's later results this season, very, very good, very, very strong, and it puts Frankie in a strong position. But bear in mind that Frankie is riding a Yamaha next year as well, and he will be riding a Yamaha in 22 if we confirm our new contract with, with the Seach team for a further extension. So it's always difficult. To some extent, it's gambling. At a certain moment in time, you need to make your choice. With all the information, with all the good expectations that you have, you make your choice and then you run with it. So, no, I'm happy with our choices.
Yeah, about satellite team, we talked a lot about that. And yeah, from some certain point of view, you might think that is not necessary because we won the title, but our engineers are not agree with that because on the track we feel we need to get more information, and two riders in some situation it's not enough, especially when there is a weather condition where you can only have a few sessions on the dry. To have more rider will give you more information. So for us it's much more difficult, let's say. It's more difficult than the other manufacturer. Having said that, we would like to make, we as a factory team, we would like to have another team in order to have more information and share information, but this project has to get an approval from our top management, and this is something that is going on. But of course, as the target is to be on a 2022, we have to decide early 21, I would say maybe before March, April maximum, otherwise we have no time to get organized. So it's still working in progress, and we didn't take any decision yet.
Thank you both.
Hi, Grzegorz Jędrzejewski from Polsat Sport. First of all, thank you for this season because it's amazing that it happened. And I have two questions. One question is to Lynn and the second is to Massimo. Lynn, with Valentino leaving the factory racing team, how do you see the development of the bike for 2021, 2022? You're going to have young riders, Fabio and Maverick in the factory team. And did you discuss it with both of the riders about how they're going to be involved in the development? And did you somehow discuss it also with Valentino, whether he's interested in developing the bike? And question to Massimo, a bit of a Yamaha question. You have a huge experience in the F1 world where the technical problems are a normal thing and those technical issues. How do you feel about the situation with Yamaha and how it was taken care of by the stewards and by the MSMA? Thank you.
Yeah, concerning the change of Valentino, obviously this weekend marks a significant moment for us and for Valentino because he's done 15 seasons with the Yamaha factory team. That's quite extraordinary. Obviously, he did that in 2 stints. First, he did 7 years before he took a 2-year break, and then he's done 8 years coming back. So it will be a change, there's no doubt, because moving next door as such will be different. But on the other side, it will not be different because Valentino will get full factory support next year. He'll be riding a factory bike with the same spec as the factory riders. It is true that some of the development will be led more by the factory team, but Valentino is a very important part of our, shall we say, data gathering. As Davide just said, having more riders on the track is important, and there's no question that our engineers will be looking at the data of Fabio and Maverick and Valentino to develop and further progress the factory bike. But also, we get some interesting information as well from having Frankie out there. So I think that it will be not a huge change it will not be a deficit in any case, and it won't change very much the way that we develop the bike.
Well, regarding the technical comparison to F1, I would say that MotoGP has one very good point, is that it can be fast in taking decisions. And I would probably in F1 this kind of solution would not happen, and it would take much longer. Nothing more to say on the decision itself.
Hey guys, Taufik from Trans7 Indonesia. I would like to asking two questions. The first one to Lynn Jarvis and Alberto Puig, and the second one for Paulo Ciabatti. The first one is I would like to ask your opinion or your analysis about the phenomena that last year's designs bike which perform better than current year spec. And the second question is, during the last years, from the riders' feedback, Michelin's tire has come up with design that seems more suitable to for one type of bike. What do the manufacturer want about the tire specs for the next year? Thank you.
Concerning the bike performance and the results achieved, you mentioned about the old bike performing better than the new bike, if I understood the question correctly. That's not really always the case. At the end of the day, we've won 7 races this year. 4 of those wins have been on the 2020 new factory spec, and Franco is using the 2020 A spec, which is different. So, you know, statistically wise, more of the wins have been on the new factory spec. It depends on the track, it depends on the circumstance, and sometimes in order to move forward and you expect to gain, but you lose something along the way as well. And it's very difficult always to constantly improve. And when you are with a factory spec, you need to progress. You can't stay with what you have and expect to be competitive in the future. So maybe on this occasion, I think Frankie has done exceptionally well. And we saw it also last year in Fabio's case. He didn't win a race in the previous season, but he was very, very strong on his package. And sometimes working with the package you have is better than constantly developing and looking and searching for new things. So it's always a trade-off and always a balance.
Yes, sorry. Well, in our case, it's not so easy to make a clear evaluation because our experienced rider could not even do a race with our bike. So it's true that in the pre-season we had some problems with the bike, but finally we managed to fix them somehow. And it's not so easy, you know. I mean, we have Nakagami with last year's machine that has progressed a lot and did a fantastic year. And we had Alex with our current machine from this year that has step by step improved. And so, as Lynn is saying, sometimes when you work a lot with one package, you get to know it so well that sometimes it's a compromise. But in our point of view, from our point of view regarding our situation this year with Mark, it's not, we don't have a 100% clear understanding or let's say feedback of our bike performance. We understand basically because we have Alex's opinion, we have Carl's opinion, and of course we have Stefan's opinion, which is our test rider, but to make a clear statement, it would be difficult now for us.
Yeah, but the question was?
About the tire spec, Paulo. About the tire spec, I would like to ask. During the last years, until now, from the riders' feedback, Michelin's tires have come up with design that seems more suitable to one type of bike. What do the manufacturer want about the tire specs for the next years?
Well, as you know, it is true that this year was a bit different because of what happened with the COVID. So, it's true that we had the tests as usual in Malaysia and in Qatar, but probably we could not carry on the activity that normally is carried over with the development of the tires. So I think for sure in our case it was not easy to adapt our bike to the new tire package. And obviously, like all the manufacturers, we cooperate with Michelin trying to get something for the future, which is probably a little bit, I wouldn't say better. I think it's something which is more stable in terms of possible performances on different conditions. I think this is the direction where we want to work together with Michelin, as probably all the other manufacturers want to do the same.
Hi, good evening. Tami from Israel. First of all, let me thank you for the season on behalf of me and our viewers on Sport 5. I have a question for Mr. Jarvis and a question for Mr. Chibati. First of all, your riders, Lynn, said that they are thinking that there might need to be some changes in the engine department in Japan in order to deal with the issues they're having this season. Now, we know that your philosophy is also development slowly and not something too drastic. Are there any changes going to be in personnel or in the way you work or in the way Japan work with your team? And to Mr. Jibati, we saw that Suzuki did what they did this season with only 2 riders. You have 6. Do you think of maybe limiting the number of riders you're going to have supplying bikes for next season to maybe deal with riders on the track and less personnel?
Regarding your question on the engine department, we did change our engine department organization at the very beginning of this year. So I don't really expect any major changes in the future, or not in the near term. But I think that the error that we made this year was made before the beginning of this year. The error that we made was made in the middle of last year. We had this, coming back to the valves, I don't want to go into too much detail, but we had the problem with our valve supplier in July that couldn't continue the production of the valves we wanted to use. At that time, Yamaha took this decision then to have 2 valve suppliers, and that was their misunderstanding of the regulations. Then we had the fact that we started the season, maybe we missed the protocol. So I think in terms of the pure engine department, our engines actually, honestly speaking, apart from the weakness of some valve batch that we had, have been very reliable for the rest of the season. Some of our engines have done more than 3,000 kilometers now, which is pretty extraordinary. And they've had to do that because we've had to park a whole load of engines. So I think that the main attention for the future improvements we will make is a much more rigid, shall we say, attention to detail in the way that we plan the season, reconfirming on the quality of components, reconfirming on the regulations. So a lot more reconfirmation will be required. For 2021 season, we're quite confident, to be frank, with our engines because of the reliability that we've seen using the right valves for most of this season. As you know, the regulations mean that we will continue to use those engines next year. We're always missing horsepower, so we could do with some more horsepower, but we're going to have to wait to 22 to get that when we're able to redevelop or use our development on the new engines. I hope that answers your question.
Well, coming to your question to me, actually we have 6 riders, but there was a point when we had 8 riders in MotoGP. So I think for Ducati, managing 6 riders is something we do since quite many years, and I think we are well organized. Actually, collecting the data from 6 riders is helping us to make better choices because, as you know, the system we have is that The engineers managing the riders are Ducati engineers, and they all meet together at the end of each day to share information and data. So obviously, we can collect from 6 riders, and next year, we're going to continue like this. As you know, we're going to have Pecco and Jack on the factory team, and then we have Jorge Martin and Joan Zarco in the Pramac, and we have two rookies, Enea Bastianini and Luca Marini, in the Sponsorama team. So it's quite exciting for next year. Obviously, we don't know if we can continue with 6 riders in 2022, but for the moment, we're happy to go ahead like this because we think it gives us the possibility not only to get more information, but also to evaluate young riders, which eventually, as it happened this year for next year, may move from the factory-supported or satellite team into the factory team, or make a step, as Zarco did, from a satellite team to a factory-supported team.
Hi guys, Lewis Duncan here from Autosport. I have a question, 2 questions. I have one for Lynn Jarvis, first of all. Like was mentioned earlier, the comments from Yamaha riders from the past few years have always been about inconsistency with the bike, and it seems to be the same problem with rear grip. It's the biggest kind of gripe from the riders. So do you think with the arrival of Cal Crutchlow as a test rider, in a way that's almost the missing link to fixing these problems, given his experience on the Honda? And I have a question also for Paolo Cibatti. Is there a regret in the way that the relationship between Ducati and Andrea Dovizioso has soured over this season? There's a lot that Dovi won't tell us about his decision to leave. So is there a lot of regret within the Ducati camp about how things have ended, given how successful that partnership has been? Thank you both.
Yeah, with regard to your question about the bike's consistency or inconsistency, yes, it's been something that's been with us for the last few years. Sometimes we can perform exceptionally well, and sometimes we really struggle, and we struggle to find solutions, and we've certainly had that again this year. I think we've been handicapped also this year. We had a new bike spec with a new engine, new chassis, but we have hardly done any testing apart from the official testing of the factory contracted riders. We started this year, we took Jorge Lorenzo on contract, and we had a full testing program planned for this year. But we were using a Japanese testing team with some European staff and with Jorge. In reality, we only ran him for 2 days in Sepang, and then finally we ran him here for the pre-Portimao test. So all other activities that we planned to do this year, unfortunately, were cancelled. And I think that definitely affected us, and that was negative for us this year because we couldn't work on the problem. We couldn't work on the issues, and I still think that Jorge would have been an excellent test rider to do that job. Looking to the second part of your question or comment about next year, anyway, next year taking Cal on board is a sign of our intention. We are fully confident that we've made a very, very good choice there with Cal. I believe Cal is a real worker. He's really hungry to get stuck into this project. We're not going to make the same mistake twice. We will definitely be running a more intensive test program next year. And we believe that with the engineering changes, we have a lot of information this year, so our engineers will change the chassis next year, and they will work on improving this matter. Plus Cal's testing feedback, plus our own pre-season test, we are quite confident that we can fix this issue next year.
Yeah, about your question, it's true that we enjoyed a lot of success together with Andrea Dovizioso. It's probably longest lasting rider for sure in the Ducati MotoGP history, eight years in a row. And we actually joined Ducati together at the beginning of 2013. So it's a kind of long story. We had long 8 years we had together in MotoGP. So definitely, winning 14 races, 14 Grand Prix, and being second in the championship for 3 years in a row was a great achievement. And it's always sad when a relationship like this comes to an end. I think obviously there are reasons for this on both sides, but maybe it's also true that after 8 years together, there is a need probably to turn the page and try to do things in a different way with new energy. So I think at the moment we try to finish this relationship on a Sunday with the best possible result, and obviously then there will be maybe time to discuss more in details the reasons of these decisions. But as I said, I think we treasure these 8 years together and the results we achieved, because obviously Andrea has been the best rider after Casey Stoner in terms of winning Grand Prix with Ducati, and this is something we will always remember.
Hi, gentlemen. This is Frank Weying from Eurosport Netherlands. I have, again, a question for Lynn and also a question for Massimo. Lynn, you were just talking about Cal as your next, or as your new test rider, but you also said that you still think that Jorge could have done a great job. So obviously you have a preference for Cal. Could you explain why you chose to sign Cal instead of continue with Jorge? And to Massimo, you said that you haven't taken a decision yet about your second rider for next year. We heard from Aleix, he did a couple of suggestions, more or less. In your decision-taking, are you leaning towards choosing a rookie for 2021, or are you looking for somebody more experienced and maybe even promote Bradley into the factory team again? Thank you.
Yeah, regarding your question about our choice of selecting Cal as opposed to renewing with Jorge, what we have seen anyway, when we did our first test, obviously in Sepang already, then it was 4 months since, at that moment, since Jorge had ridden a bike in anger when he did the first test, the shakedown test in Sepang. Actually, we didn't test anything, but Jorge got himself up to speed. Then, as I said, we didn't do any testing. We couldn't do any testing due to the COVID situation until Portimao. And again, Jorge had not spent any time on a bike during these many months. And I think our decision was basically based on the fact that Cal is coming out of a complete Grand Prix season. So if we were to take Jorge in the meantime has been 1 whole year or almost 1.5 years away from a competitive Grand Prix season. And Cal is, should we say, race fit, ready to go. And he was available. He showed a real passion to do this job, and we think he's the right choice at this moment for us.
Thank you.
Well, regarding the second rider, for sure Bradley is a valid option. He is a rider with a lot of experience, so he could have the chance, really. We are also looking at the market of the young talent. Moto2 is showing that is a very good gym for the MotoGP. Next year there will be many, so maybe one more is not a bad idea, but we are still evaluating that.
Thank you.
Hi, Tommy again. A question for Mr. Puig. I wanted to know, we saw how Bradley was working this season, and I wanted to know if you already decided on his future and if he's going to continue as a test rider. And another question, I wanted to know if, I understand we're not getting all the information about Marquez and his rehabilitation process, but I wanted to know if you know the exact situation that the rider is in and his health situation and the future that he's dealing.
Well, the situation is what we explained. I cannot tell you something that I don't know, because I'm not, first of all, I'm not a doctor, and second, I don't have a crystal ball. But what we explained is based on the program that we decided together with the doctors, of course, and hopefully it will be okay. I mean, it has been clearly a slower process than we expected, and of course we wanted. But it has been like this. I mean, not all the situations are like you expect, or not all the, let's say, injuries evolve like you would like. So yeah, basically this is the story. I mean, there's not. I know we have been trying to explain, let's say, race by race the situation, because we always had the hope that Mark could join during the season. No? That's why we didn't say, okay, see you next year. So we have been trying to keep the situation, but finally at the end of the year it was, I mean, there was no time, and that's when we announced it was impossible. So we hope that in the next weeks, month, we can say that the rider is back to full fit, but unfortunately I cannot answer you. I just hope that. And regarding Stefan, yeah, I mean, Stefan, your question was about his progress. I think he did a fantastic progress, and we are very happy. And yes, we will continue with Stefan for next year as a test rider, because he changed a lot. Of course, at the beginning of the year, the guy was, I mean, at his house planning a test rider year, and suddenly, I mean, all this COVID appears, then all this market is out, so he has to change his mind, and he really did. He went to speed very fast, and the truth is that we load him a lot with so many tests, so many races. So he did a great effort, and Honda appreciates his effort. And also the data we are collecting from him is very, very interesting. So yes, on your question, Stefan will continue with Honda as a test rider for the next year.
Gentlemen, that concludes the press conference. If I could just trouble you for one more photo standing, and then you are free to go. The very best of luck to you for this final weekend, and thank you very much for your time. Please. Thank you. Thank you very much.